Hi everyone. In this video, I want to talk about how you can test Salesforce outbound integration in your local machine. Now, this was supposed to be part of my previous video, one of my previous video, which was about how to use custom authentication in name credentials. In that video, I had decided that I will explain this stuff as well, wherein how you can set up your local machine so that you can test Salesforce outbound integration. But that video in itself became too long. It was about 1 hour 40 minutes or 1 hour 45 minutes. And then I decided I will move this part of testing Salesforce outbound integration in your local machine and how to set up your local machine for that purpose into a separate video. Right? And for this setup, we will use Salesforce as our client. And the authentication protocol which we'll use is again named credentials using custom authentication, right? And as a server, we'll use Node.js. Now, what's Node.js? I have written a definition here. Node.js is a powerful runtime that lets you run JavaScript code on your server outside of browser. So what it's essentially saying is if you have any JavaScript code and you want to run it outside the browser, you can use Node.js. In our case, what we will do, we will use Node.js to build a custom API that Salesforce can call. And in doing so, Node.js will act like a real external system. Now, how do we build a custom API? It's pretty simple. It will be a simple JavaScript code, okay, which will act as a custom API. And using Node.js, we will run that JavaScript code outside of browser, right? I will show all the steps which we need to do it. Now the custom API, which will build using JavaScript and that we will run using Node.js, will be running in our local machine, right? And Salesforce is cloud-based. It is on public internet. Then how would Salesforce connect to something which is running in our local machine, right? How will that happen? So in order to achieve that, in order to bridge that gap of Salesforce being on public internet and this custom API which we will create will be in our local machine, we have something called Ngrok, right? This Ngrok we will use. What is Ngrok? Here's the definition. Ngrok is a tunneling tool that exposes your local server to internet. So even though our Node.js API is running only on our laptop or your local machine, Ngrok gives it a public HTTPS URL that Salesforce can access as if it were a real world endpoint. So using Ngrok tool, we will expose or tunnel our custom API, which is running in our local. We will tunnel that API onto a public endpoint, public HTTPS URL. As soon as it is exposed to public HTTPS URL, Salesforce can easily access that endpoint. So in a nutshell, what will happen? Salesforce will hit the endpoint which Ngrok will provide us, and that endpoint will be linked to our custom API, which is running in our local server, right? So we'll see all the steps as to how to configure this. Now you might also think that why to go in all this hassle of using Ngrok, Node.js and JavaScript to simulate a server, when you can do the same thing like this as well, right? You can make the client as Salesforce and you can also make server as Salesforce. So both client and server as Salesforce. Why the need to involve all these things, Node.js, Ngrok and JavaScript, right? So I'll list down the reasons why I do it. So these are the reasons why I prefer using Node.js and Ngrok, all these tools, rather than using Salesforce both as client and server. The first reason is real world simulation. Now, those of you who have been in Salesforce space for long know that more than 90% of integration are not between Salesforce and Salesforce, right? More than 90% of integrations are between Salesforce and some other system like microservice or maybe Node.js itself, right? It's with some other system. It's not Salesforce. So that is one of the reasons when I also try to simulate anything in my local, I try to simulate it just like real world projects or real world implementations. Wherein if I'm simulating outbound integration, then client of course will be Salesforce, but I try to keep the server as some other system. So that is my reason. That is my first reason why I use these tools. Second reason is unlimited control. In our example, as I said, we'll be using JavaScript code to create a custom API, and you are quite aware that JavaScript is quite powerful language, right? So you can do whatever you want. You can simulate whatever scenario you want in JavaScript, which probably might not be possible when you are using Salesforce as server, or you're exposing a custom REST resource in Salesforce to act like a server. JavaScript is very powerful tool. You can do many things like, introduce time delays, invalid responses, and some very low level HTTP behaviors, which probably might not be possible in, Apex in Salesforce. So that is the reason you have a lot of control as to what sort of scenario you want to simulate, right? So that is my second reason why I don't use both the client and server as Salesforce. My third reason is focus on one type of integration. Now, when I prepare any video, I focus on only one type of integration. If it is an integration video, I will focus on either outbound integration or inbound integration with regards to Salesforce. For example, if I am preparing a video or I'm making a video for outbound integration using name credentials, I just want to focus on outbound integrations from Salesforce perspective, right? So that I can do here. So because the client, Salesforce is only the client here, I can talk about all the outbound integration related steps for Salesforce, and rest are for some other system, like it's for Node.js, right? So as far as Salesforce is concerned, I'm only talking about outbound integrations for Salesforce. But if I make both client and server as Salesforce, and I'm preparing a video for outbound integration for Salesforce, I will have to talk about inbound as well, because server is also Salesforce, right? Then I'll have to, rather than just talking about name credentials, I will have to also talk about connected app, right? And all the settings of connected app and all the stuff related to inbound integration that I personally don't like. So when I want to talk about one type of integration, I only want to talk about that type of integration with regards to Salesforce. So that is my third reason. That is the reason why I don't keep both client and server as Salesforce, right? And my fourth reason is learning new tools and technologies never hurt. So when I'm trying to test outbound integration for Salesforce, I will only keep Salesforce as client. And for server, I'll use tools like Node.js and Ngrok and JavaScript. So if you do like this and not like this, where you're keeping both client and server as Salesforce, if you do like this, you're learning new tools like Node.js, what is Node.js, what is JavaScript, what is Ngrok, and learning these new tools never hurts. So if you're a software professional, right, working in a software industries, so having a working knowledge of these tools will never hurt. In fact, it will be, add on to your skills. It can be used not just with Salesforce or this scenario. It can be used in many scenarios if you're building some personal projects or something like that, right? These tools are always beneficial. So that is one of the reasons I try to, whenever possible, I try to use and learn new tools and technologies. So that is one of my reasons why I do this, why I use Node.js and Ngrok and all this sort of stuffs. And the last reason is it's personal choice, guys. So for me, it's a personal choice because of all of the above reasons. If you can, if you're trying to learn integrations in Salesforce, you can always use both client and server as Salesforce, and still you will get all the knowledge you need. But for me, as I said, right, it's my personal choice, and the reason are what I just listed above, right? So yeah, that is the reason I personally don't go with this setup, and I personally like going with these sort of setups. Okay. Now let's continue with our setup. The first thing is, how do we install Node.js? But before you try installing Node.js, just verify in your local system that whether you already have Node.js installed or not. Some of you might already have it. So just go to command prompt, and in command prompt, type this command, node space -v. If you get some error like this, that means you don't have Node.js installed. If you already have Node.js installed in your system, you will get rather a version of Node.js. Okay, we'll see that once we install Node.js, right? So let's go to Google and search for Node.js. This site will open. Click on this site. It says download Node.js LTS, right? Just click on this. You can see it's installed. Let's open this file. Let's install it. Yeah, just keep the default options. Automatically install necessary tools. I would recommend don't check this option, because then it will install many other tools which probably you don't need at this moment. So let's keep this option as unchecked. Click next and then click on install. Yeah, so it is installed now. Now let's go back and run that same command. Maybe I have to open a new window. Let me open command prompt again. Command prompt node -v. You see, now I got this v22.16.0. That means Node.js is already installed in our system now. This is the version of Node.js, right? So that's how you install Node.js. Now we are done installing Node.js. Next, we will see the JavaScript code which we will use to build a custom API. And for that, we will use VS Code to write JavaScript code. Okay, and what I have done is I have created a folder in my local. If you see in C drive, a new folder, Node.js demo. I will open this folder in VS Code. Go to C drive, Node.js should be somewhere, Node.js demo. Select this folder. So you have got this folder, and in this folder I have I will write the JavaScript code. Let's call it Node.js demo.js, since it's a JavaScript file. Okay, and I have already got the code ready. I'll just paste it here. So this is the code which we'll use. I will explain this code. This similar code I used in my video, wherein I demonstrated how to use custom authentication in name credentials. So you can refer from there as well if you want. I will leave a link to that video in the description of this video in YouTube. And if you're watching this video on my website, then I will leave a link to this video, to the video which explains name credentials and custom authentication. I will leave a link to that video in my blog post as well, where I upload this video. Okay. So in this integration, I will show custom authentication, as I said. And if you want to know in detail what is custom authentication and how to use custom authentication using name credentials in Salesforce, as I said, I will leave a link to that video, in the description of this video. Okay, so just to give you a brief idea, in custom authentication, one of the methods of custom authentication is that in the header, we send a particular value, which we call as API key. So the server and the client agrees on that values, and the client on that value, and client sends that value to the server, and server verifies whether that value has been received in the header or not. If yes, then server says, okay, the client is now authenticated and the integration can continue. So that is in a short what is custom authentication. So if you see here, what this code is trying to do is it's trying to from the header is trying to pull out this key x-api-key, and it's storing this in API key variable, and it's checking if the value of that key is this sfdc to node.js nc, then it's saying access granted. If it is not, then in the else it's saying invalid API key or no API key. So what I'll do, I have also created a name credentials here already in my free Salesforce org. I will show the setup for that as well. Yeah, so this is the setup. I will not explain in detail again how this setup has been done and how this works. As I already said, I have already prepared a video for that. You can go have a look. So what I have done here is there is the external credential with this name, there is a name credential with this name, right? And then there is a principal, and then there is a header, and we will invoke this from our developer console. This is the code wherein we'll refer our name credentials. So this is the name of the name credentials which I have created. And if I go back to my name credentials, this is the principal, and in the principal actually I will not be able to it will be masked, the value will be masked, but actually this value is nothing but what the code is expecting here, sfdc to node.js nc, right? So this is what I have stored here. So when I execute this, it will make an integration call to my JavaScript code with this value in the header for this particular key, right? And the JavaScript code will check this. If the value is correct, it matches this, then it will say access granted, else it will say invalid API key or no API key. So this is the overall setup, okay, how this integration will work. But right now, as you are aware, this is just my local JavaScript code, right? I have not exposed it on a public URL so that Salesforce can make a call out to this. So we will see slowly. I will explain how we do this. Okay. Yeah. So this is the JavaScript code. Now we will move on to the Node.js part. How do we initialize Node.js? So for doing that, what we have to do is, if you remember, this was the folder, right, where I have created this JavaScript file. So I need to initialize my Node.js, or what you can call as Node.js project, inside this folder. So to do that, I have to navigate to this folder first, right? So cd c Node.js demo, and in this you have to execute this command npm init -y. So now this has created a package.json file in this folder. So if I minimize this, you can see, right, this got created. So you can say now we have initialized this folder with Node.js. Okay. Now if I go back to my JavaScript code, you see something called express here. So what is this? I will come to this. Yeah. So express is sort of a library, or you can call a dependency, right? So and what this express does, it gives us an inbuilt set of commands which we can use to handle HTTP request and response. Okay, so that's what express is. It's sort of a library or package, and in Node.js terms we call it, a dependency. So how do we install this library or package or dependency? So this is the command npm install express. So what we are doing right now here is we are installing this dependency. Okay, so it has done something like this. It added 66 packages and all this stuff. If I go to the folder again, now you will see some more files, node_modules and this, right? So now we have installed express dependency. Now let's go back to our JavaScript code and understand each line what it means. Okay, so the first line, this one, this loads the express library into our file. So this line, okay, so this will load the express library into this node.js demo.js file, and the next line, this will create an instance of that express application library. Okay, so now we have a variable app or app, which is nothing but an instance of that library. And using this variable, you can use all the inbuilt methods of that library. Now the third line, this line, what it is doing is, when we write this line, this will enable this instance which we created earlier. This will enable this instance to be able to parse the input which is being sent as part of the HTTP call. Okay. So when we write this statement, this will let this app instance to be able to parse the HTTP request. And if we don't use this, then statements like this, right, request.headers or any other statements which require us to pass the request will become undefined. Now next statement, what is this? This actually defines a route. So you are seeing get here, right? So this actually in HTTP calls, there are methods which we can use, right? Get, post, put, all those sorts of methods. So this statement is defining a route for the get method. So if any external systems does a get, for this API, so this is the statements which actually enables that. So it will be like there will be a base URL which we'll understand later. There will be a base URL, and after that base URL will have something called /myAPI. So if an external system uses that base URL /myAPI, then that external system can make a get call to our custom API. So this line is enabling that. It's sort of a route we are defining for a get call. And these parameters, right, request, REQ, and response, RES. So request will, this parameter, let's call it request, even though it's written as REQ, this parameter will hold the incoming request which is being sent from the external system, and this will use to set the response, this parameter. Okay. Now what is this line? In this line, we are parsing the request header. We are passing the request header, and we are trying to fetch a value for this particular key. So as you might be aware, request headers or request body are in the format of key value pair. So this is the key. We are trying to retrieve the value of this key and store it in this variable. This command probably you can ignore. It's commented out. We don't use it. It's basically used to clear the console, before each API call or each HTTP request. So maybe for now, just ignore this statement, right? These two statements, we are just trying to log the, log certain information from the HTTP request. First is we are trying to log the key. Okay. So this is the variable, as I said, right, which will hold the value of this key, XAPI key. So we are trying to log that, and then we are also trying to log the header as well, the whole header. So I'll show you where this, when I say we'll log it, where it will actually get logged. Okay. Now next is a simple if-else condition. If the API key, right, the value of this key from the header is this sfdc to Node.js NC, we will return a response saying access granted, right? We are setting the response variable RES. If it does not match, we will say, we'll send a status code as 401, and the message will be invalid API key or no API key. Okay. And then this statement, what it does, it starts the Node.js server on port 3000, on the local port 3000, local port 3000 of your machine. It starts that, starts the Node.js server on that local port. So mind you, it is not yet live on the public URL. It is just running on the local port 3000. And this, again, we are just logging in, as soon as the Node.js starts running on the local port 3000, we will see a log or or this message saying that server is now running on this particular address. It's a localhost 3000, right? So when I said local, local port 3000, it means what it means. It means localhost, right? Localhost, and the port is 3000. That's all it means. Now let's run this JavaScript code using Node.js. For that, I will go to my command prompt. I'm already in the same folder, and I'll write this command. Node, and the name of our JavaScript file, which is what? It is Node.js demo, right? So Node Node.js demo. This is the name of our JavaScript file. So I'll write this command, press enter. You see what it is saying, server running on this. So this is nothing but this statement. So what has happened here is now the Node.js server is running on this address localhost 3000. And if we or any system hit this address localhost 3000 via this route my API, then this code will get executed. Okay. So let's invoke this URL. So let's go here, open a new tab, and this is the address of our localhost 3000, right? http:/localhost 3000. Now, as I said, this is the base URL in this case. If I go back to my code, right, this is the base URL and this is the route. So for us to invoke this custom API, or rather this code, we have to invoke it like base URL and then this route. Okay, so like this, my API. So if I enter now, what should happen? It is saying error, invalid API key or no API key. That means what happened? This got invoked and it entered in this else condition, because this is what we are saying in the UI, right? Invalid API key or no API key. If I go back, invalid API key or no API key. That means that's fine if it is going in else condition, but what we have achieved here is, right, by invoking this URL, this localhost and then /my API, we are able to invoke this code, right, from the browser. That's what is important. It's not important where it went in the code. The important part is we are able to invoke this. Okay. And yeah, I also wanted to show you this console log, right? So since this code was invoked, this must have got written somewhere, right? Logged. So this will get logged in the same window here where we started our Node.js server. So if you see what it is saying, this is the log, right? Received API key undefined, and this is full header. So this received API key is what? This is the first part, received API key. Right now the API key is undefined because when we invoked from the browser the localhost URL, we did not pass any API key, right? So this was not passed. Okay, so that's why it did not find it. It did not find this X API key in the request header. And we have also logged the complete request header under this full headers. So let's go back and see. So this is the part, right? Full headers. If you see, we did not put this API key, right? X API key somewhere, because we directly invoked this URL from the browser. So we did not put anything like X API key. So it's not there. If you see, there is no key with that name in this list. That's why it's saying undefined, which is expected, which is fine. But the important part is what I wanted to show is how do we invoke this JavaScript code from our browser. Okay. Now we saw, right? So this is the URL. If I hit this URL in browser, we are able to invoke our custom API, which is written in JavaScript, right? So what is the next step? In our demonstration, wherein we are trying to call this custom API from Salesforce using name credentials, how will Salesforce call this endpoint? Should we just copy this endpoint and maybe go to name credentials and update this endpoint there? Should we just do it something like this? Something like this? Do you think we should do it like this? Because we saw, right, from the browser we were able to call it. So if I save it, it is anyways giving an error, which is a different error, HTTP and HTTPS. So let's ignore it. Let's cancel it. So we can't share this URL, right? So what is this URL? This is actually pointing to my my laptop's local server. So whenever you enter this localhost :3000 in your browser, the browser knows that this is pointing to my laptop's local server, and it will try to find this custom API, which is routed via this my-API, right? So the browser knows it's in the it's in my local laptop's local server. So even if some other system, if for example you try to copy this and execute this in your laptop's browser, your browser will try to find this API in your local machine, not in my local machine. So the browser knows, right? This is in my local laptop's local server. So we can't share this URL. This is not yet on the public internet. And to, to somehow make this code or API running in our local server available on public URL is what we will achieve using the tool called Ngrok. That's where Ngrok comes into picture. Okay. Now next we'll see how to set up Ngrok in our local machine. So for that, go to Google, search for Ngrok. Now this is the website, ngrok.com. So we'll have to do two things here. One is sign up for an account in Ngrok website, and also we have to install or rather download one installable. Okay, so this is the link using which you can download that. So click on this download Ngrok first. We will create the account later. First we'll download the executable. Click on this link. So I'm using Windows, so I'll download for Windows. You can download for whatever OS you are using. I will go to this download tab. I will click on download. Yeah, save as. Okay, so right now I have already created one folder Ngrok in my C drive. So if I go to C drive, I have this folder called Ngrok. So I will save my zip file here. The downloadable, the executable file is in zip format. So I'll save that as a zip file with the name as Node, not Node, Ngrok. Yeah, and click save. Is saved. If I open the folder, yeah, so we have got it here. Okay, so let's extract it. Extract all. Yeah, it is extracted. So if you see C drive, I'll go back, C drive Ngrok, and then this was the zip, and then it got extracted here. Let's make it a bit simple. Let's delete this zip file because we have already extracted it, and I'll copy this ngrok.executable file, ngrok.exe file. I'll cut it and I will put it here in this folder. Okay, so that it's a bit clean. The path is a bit clean. C drive Ngrok folder and then this executable, and I'll delete this. So what essentially I've done is I have downloaded the zip file, extracted it, pulled out the executable file from there, and saved it in C drive Ngrok folder. Yeah, so this we'll use later. I will show you how to use it, or rather yeah, I will show you we can check. So we can execute at least one command for this executable file. So what we'll do, we'll copy this path, cngrok, open command prompt. Yeah, and then navigate to that folder, cd. Yeah, and type ngrok version. So yeah, so this is the version of the Ngrok executable file which we have downloaded. Okay, now I'll come to this later, that how we use this file. Okay, now let's go back and create a account in Ngrok website. So what I'll do, I will click back here 2 times. Yeah, now go to this website, click sign up. You can sign up using an email or GitHub or Google. I will sign up using Google. I have created a demo Gmail account just for this Ngrok purpose, so I'll use this one, and I will enter my password. Yeah, continue. It says, do you want to create an Ngrok account for my this email, my ngrokdemo@gmail.com. I'll click I accept, then click on create account. It's asking you to set up multi-factor authentication. So if you want, you can set up, you can go through the steps as to how to set this up. Okay, or you can skip it for now. What I will do, I will skip it for now. It says you can set up, if you want, you can set up multi-factor authentication later in the settings. So yeah, I'll click on got it. It will ask you certain information, just enter whatever you feel like is correct. What are you interested? API gateway. Are you asking Ngrok for production development? Yeah, you can fill anything, what you seem suitable. Continue. So yes, now the account is created. Okay, so we have got a Ngrok account. Now we will use this account, some settings from this account to configure our Ngrok in local. Once you're logged in into your account, what you need to do is you need to go to your auth token here on left hand side, your auth token, and then copy the auth token from here. Click on copy, it will get copied, and then you need to execute this line in your command prompt. So here keep rest of the statements same, whatever it's written here, and here you have to put your auth token, whatever you copied from here, right? Whatever you copied from the top. So let's execute it. What it says, ngrok config add. Let's go to our command prompt, and I'm in the same folder where my executable is saved, right? C ngrok. So it says ngrok. Let's copy it rather than typing. We'll copy the auth token again, but let's copy this, or rather let's copy whole. Copied. Go to our paste. Now this part we have to replace with our auth token. Go back here, click on copy, and then click paste here. So my auth token is pasted. Now I need to click enter. What it says, authentic auth token saved to this file. So now the configuration is done. And if you see in this video, I have blurred the auth token because I don't want to expose this token because it's a token specific to my account. That's why I have blurred the token. But you can just copy and paste it in your command prompt from your account, from your Ngrok account. Next, what I'll do, I'll clear this screen. So you can type CLS. So this screen is cleared. Now let's see how we will use Ngrok to expose our custom API on a public endpoint, a public URL. Okay, so for that I will go back to my Node.js control. Remember, this was the control. I'll stop it. Okay, I'll stop this server, and the way to stop it is in Windows, at least click Control C. So this is stopped now. I will write CLS here as well. So this is also clear. So, and remember guys, you have to open separate command prompts for, if you're running, Node.js and Ngrok both at the same time, you have to open separate command prompts. So I have two command prompt open, right? One is this one, and one is this one, right? So both are ready. Now what we'll do is we will go back to our JavaScript code. There is no change required in the JavaScript code. We will again start the Node.js server. So I'll go back to the command prompt for Node.js. This is the one, right? C Node.js demo. Here I will write node. Yeah, this is the file, right? Node.js demo.js. Now it is saying server running on localhost, and we have already checked when we use this URL /myapi and use this URL and pasted in the browser, we were able to invoke this code, right? But that is, as I said, we were invoking a server running on our local laptop. Now how do we use Ngrok to tunnel this whole thing on public URL? Now what is this? If I go back here, this is running on our local server, localhost 3000. Now go back to the other command prompt where we are in the folder where we have the Ngrok Ngrok executable, or rather ngrok.exe file. What I mean is this file. So I mean this C Ngrok path only. If I go back here, yeah. Now here what you have to write is Ngrok HTTP 3000. That is a port number, and hit enter. See what it is saying. It has given some details, but what we are concerned about here is this line. It is saying now this URL is pointing to this localhost, right? We maximize this 3000. So this is the URL which Ngrok has given us.
Now if we use this URL, I've copied this, right? So this URL is now pointing to localhost 3000 port. Now I've copied the URL. Now if I go back to my browser and if I paste this URL slash my API, right? Because this is the base URL and this is the route, press enter. You will see this is a warning you can ignore. Okay, click visit site. See, we got the same response which we were getting earlier from this localhost. That means this URL is also now routing to this from where we are getting this response. We are getting this from our JavaScript. So that means now this URL is also routing to this JavaScript, right? And this URL is now a public URL. Public URL as in it is now on the internet, and any external system can use this URL, can use this URL to make a API call. And if they do so, just now we have done it here. If any external system uses this URL, the control will land here, right?
Now what we'll do, we will use this URL which has been generated by Ngrok in the name credentials. We will configure this URL in the name credentials. Okay, so let me copy the URL. Right, we only need the base URL for name credentials. Copied. Go to our name credential settings. This is my name credential. Click on edit. Remove this previous one. I'm pasting the new one. Okay, so this is what we got just now from Ngrok. Click on save. Now we will execute our Apex from anonymous window. So we already have the code ready, right? I showed you earlier. And if you see, this was the name credentials where I pasted the Ngrok URL, custom auth nc, and this is the route, right? My -API. This is what, if I go back to my JavaScript, this is my -API. So what I'll do now, I will execute this. And now what we are expecting, when we were using this URL directly in the browser, we were getting this invalid API key or no API key. The reason was we were not passing any API key, right? There was no mechanism for us to pass any API key. That's why it was going in else condition. Okay. And yeah, one more thing. Yeah, before we do this, when I pasted this whole URL in the browser and pressed enter, we would have got console logs as well, right? Here, this is our Node.js console. You see, this was the this is what we received. And if you see somewhere, you will see the Ngrok URL. See host. This is the URL, right? If I scroll down, this is the same URL which you are seeing here. So in this, since we were not passing the XAPI key header, that's why if you see, there is no XAPI key here, right? And we are getting undefined here as well. So that was the reason we are getting this response. Now, when we invoke this endpoint from our name credentials in Salesforce, we will pass the XAPI key. How we will do that? We have already configured that. So if I go to my external credential, if I go to the custom header, right? So we already have this XAPI key configured here, X-API-key. This is what it is looking for, this JavaScript code, XAPI key. And how it's fetching the value? It's fetching using formula, right? It's trying to pull out from the principal of this external credential. So this principal, it will pull by default from this principal. Okay, so and in the principal, it will look for this parameter API key. So this also we have already configured. If I go here, edit, we have this, right? API key, and I have already saved. What value is saved here, even though it is masked, is this value, right? Maybe copy it again and I'll save it again here. Yeah. So now click on save. Okay, so now what is happening? We are sending XAPI key in the header from Apex. So ideally what should happen, if everything works fine, the code should find this XAPI key in the header and the value should be SFDC to Node.js NC, and it should give this response, access granted, because this if condition will get satisfied. Okay, let's test this. Let's go back to our developer console, debug, anonymous window. Yeah, this is the class, right? Custom auth NC, call public API. Let's execute. Let's see what happens. Debug. Yes, this is what was supposed to happen, right? Access granted. It has gone in this. That means we successfully pass the XAPI key in the header. We can check that also in the console. Go back to our Node.js console. This is the latest one, right? From Salesforce. See, we have passed this SFDC to Node.js NC. And if you see here, it is present here as well, XAPI key, right? And the host is again the Ngrok URL, which I saved in the name credentials. So yeah, so this is how you set up, or if you want to test outbound integration from Salesforce in your local, this is how you can use Ngrok to tunnel your local custom API onto public internet, right? So we have seen the use of Ngrok and how to configure Ngrok, Node.js and all those stuff. And I hope you'll find this video useful and you learn some new things today. And also, if you want to understand how these formulas and all work, right? How you pass custom headers, how are custom headers working, how you use these formulas, how to configure these formulas. Again, I've explained all these things in very much detail in my another video, which is about custom authentication in name credentials. And you can check that video. I'll leave a link to that video, right? In that video, you will understand how all these things work. But the purpose of this video was to understand how you can use Ngrok, Node.js and JavaScript to simulate a local outbound integration from Salesforce to Node.js. And with that, we'll finish this video. So thanks for watching. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.